Okay, let's get a check now of the top business news stories. Kate Moody is here. Hi there, Kate.
Hi, Tom.
A lot of reaction to this sort of the dueling proposals put forward by Prime Minister Boris Johnson of the UK and Michel Barnier, who's going to be negotiating Brexit on behalf of the European Union. And that's had some impact, hasn't it, on the currency markets?
Yeah, absolutely, because investors had really been hoping for signs that trade talks between the two would be off to a rather smooth start now that Brexit was official. Those hopes largely dashed as the British Prime Minister said he would not fall in with European rules and regulations, and the EU's top negotiator laid a firm line. The prospect of trade barriers, or at the very least lengthy negotiations, saw the pound sterling drop fairly sharply, trading just under $1.30 at about €1.17 there. Throughout this process, investors and businesses have been looking for clarity and a seamless transition. Monday's speeches setting the stage for still more roadblocks ahead. Well, one of the Brexit battlegrounds is set to be in the sea. Well over half of fish caught in British waters go to European boats, and the future fishing rights could wind up being used as bait in the broader trade discussions. Monty Francis reports.
Fishing for a deal in troubled waters. With Britain now out of the EU, the UK is set to regain control of its fishing zone by the end of the year. But it is also set to lose millions of euros in subsidies it received under the Common Fisheries Policy, the set of rules such as fishing quotas put forth for the European fishing industry. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is pushing for annual negotiations with the EU.
It must reflect the fact that the UK will be an independent coastal state at the end of this year, 2020, controlling our own waters, ensuring that British fishing grounds are first and foremost for British boats.
40% of fish caught in UK waters are reeled in by British fishermen. Prior to Brexit, the UK's fishing area was considered part of a fishing zone accessible by all EU countries. With that coming to an end in 2021, the UK wants a deal with the EU similar to Norway's, in which Norway contributes to the EU's budget in exchange for access to the European market. And European fishermen who rely heavily on access to British waters are strongly against any such agreement. The EU's Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, said any large trade agreement would be tied to access for European ships to the UK's fishing zone.
If we can't manage a deal by the end of the year, we may fall off a cliff in a sense. There will be some areas where there's no other solution than falling off a cliff. I'm thinking about trade and fisheries here.
There are just 11 months left to reach an agreement. With such a tight timetable, EU leaders have repeatedly warned a deal on fisheries could be the one that got away.
Let's check in on the day's trading action. Now, Wall Street's been trending higher. We saw stocks paring back from some of their earlier very sharp gains, although the Nasdaq has now jumped up about 1.3% this hour. Nike shares are up 4%. The major European indices also closed higher, gains of about half a percentage point across the board as manufacturing data for the Eurozone hit a 9-month high. Shares of the French payments and tech company Ingenico jumped 17% as it announced a takeover by competitor Worldline. Well, oil prices have fallen to their lowest levels in over a year, prompting producers to reevaluate their output. The price of US WTI briefly dropped below $50 per barrel, international Brent crude at around $54.40. Officials from OPEC and allies, including Russia, will be meeting to discuss the impact on Tuesday and Wednesday. They're considering moving forward a higher-level ministerial meeting to later this month. Reports suggest they could further cut their already scaled-back exports by a further 500,000 barrels. Chinese demand for crude has dropped 20% in recent weeks as the coronavirus outbreak intensifies. China is the world's largest importer and second largest consumer, so if demand continues to slow, it could have a major impact on global prices going forward. Well, earlier, China's stock market had its first trading day since the extended Lunar New Year's holiday, and concerns about the coronavirus had an immediate impact on shares. The Shanghai Composite plunged nearly 8%, wiping out nearly $400 billion in market value. That's its biggest single-day drop since 2015. Manufacturing and consumer goods companies saw the biggest drops, while healthcare shares rose. The losses came despite moves by Chinese authorities to limit the damage. China's central bank injecting the equivalent of some 150 billion euros into money markets to try to dampen the effect on the broader economy. The The currency exchange platform Travelex says some of its services remain offline more than a month after a major cyber attack. While UK users have been able to regain access to international money transfer and wires, banks that depend on the provider have not. The Royal Bank of Scotland, Barclays and Lloyds are among those that are unable to offer online exchanges. Travelex says it has not paid any money to the hackers who had demanded some $6 million in ransom to regain control over their site. The U.S. state of Iowa is kicking off a long Democratic primary season this Monday. Whichever candidate emerges as the winner, the state economy is certainly reaping the benefits, with campaign workers, journalists, and even political tourists flocking to the Hawkeye State to spend their money. Catherine Viette has the story.
The Iowa caucuses are big business. Every 4 years, the state is inundated with campaign workers and the media, as well as self-described political junkies on holiday.
So what we do is we get a link from the Des Moines Register, and we follow the candidates. So there's a candidate tracker, and so we go to as many events as we can to see the candidates up close and personal. It's very exciting for us.
Local businesses have gotten in on the act too, selling T-shirts and other caucus-related swag.
It is like having a small university dropped onto Des Moines every 4 years. There are so many people who show up to work here. This weekend will be wild, and then the day after is pretty surreal. You'll have people, staffers with roller bags on their way to the airport coming into the store to get their last souvenirs.
The spending influx covers campaign expenses like rental cars, office space, meals, and voter databases. And this economic boost extends to every corner of the state as candidates crisscross the counties meeting voters. The biggest beneficiary is the capital, Des Moines, where hotel rates can double during this period. Local officials estimate that in the final week before the caucus, hotel revenue will generate just over an extra $11 million. But by far, the most spending is reserved for advertising. During the past 13 months, $63 million has been spent on TV ads. No matter the results, Iowa comes out a winner.
Still lots more to come in the Iowa caucus, obviously, Tom.
Absolutely. We got our eye very firmly fixed on Iowa at the moment. Thank you so much, Kate Moody from our Business News Desk. That's it from me. I'll be back in a couple of